In this section, you're going to learn how to tie some basic knots. But before we get into tying those knots, we need to cover some basic terminology. In the English language, we refer to all three of these things that are in front of me as a knot, just generally. But there are some more specific nomenclature we can use. Probably easiest to start with this one first. This is a hitch. A hitch is a knot that is tied around an object or fastened to an object. In this case, it's a carabiner. After that, we have a bend. A bend is where a knot that joins two ropes together. So here I have the red rope joined to the white rope there. And then finally, what's actually a knot is tied with a single piece of rope, and its shape does not depend on objects or another rope. It just can be as is. When it comes to knots and knot tying, there is some terminology we use to describe the process of tying a knot. So here in my hand, I have the tail end of the rope. And this end of the rope, when it's used to tie a knot, is called the working end. The working end is the active end of the rope used during the knot tying process. So there I use that end actively to tie this simple figure 8 knot. Now, in contrast to that, we have the standing end. The standing end is the inactive part of the rope. So here my standing end actually goes down to a coil on the ground there. Oftentimes we use the working end to pass it around the standing end to tie knots. So once again, I made this simple figure 8 shape just by passing that working end around this standing end. When we pass the rope around stuff, we call these turns. Probably easiest to see here on my finger. If I take the rope over my finger there, that's a half turn. Or if I bring it all the way around, this is a full turn or round turn. The next terminology to understand the difference between is a bight and a loop. A bight is when you just pinch the rope together and you touch one part of the rope to another part of the rope. A loop is when you actually cross these strands of the rope around each other there. So here I made a little twist there and they've crossed the strands. So a bight, they just pinched together, and a loop, they've crossed over each other. Continuing with that, so if I take a bight of the rope there, I talked about the working end earlier, and the working end is the active end of the rope that's used for tying a knot. So here, the end of my bight is going to be my working end. And if I pass that around my standing ends, just like I did before, I can actually tie that same knot I did earlier, but using a bight. Now I have a figure 8 on a bight. Working end of the bight, standing ends down there, which I passed it around to make those turns, and up to the loop to make this figure 8. You're going to actually learn how to make this knot later on in these videos. Get familiar with the terminology that's used commonly among knot tiers, which again is the working end, the standing end, the turns, bight, and a loop.